key elements to growth of innovation and scientific discoveries. The next session will be talking about how we are changing the way we learn or the need thereof. To do that, I'm going to introduce the moderator for this coming session, who is Ms. Nathalie Munyampenda, Managing Director of the Next Einstein. Nathalie, please come forward and introduce the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would say it's mid-morning, so still good morning to you, everybody. As she said, my name is Nathalie Munyampenda. I'm the Managing Director for NEF, and let me thank you all for coming to this important gathering. Today we're going to be talking about changing the way we learn, and it's a particularly important topic for me. I'm quite passionate about it. If I ever do a PhD, that would be probably in education. So before we start, because I want us to get going and not lose time, let me invite our esteemed panelists, starting with Teuw Niane, qui est le ministre de l'Éducation supérieure, la recherche et l'innovation maintenant. Merci. Let me also welcome Dr. Franz Córdova. She's the director of the U.S. National Science Foundation. Let me also welcome Professor Romain Murenzi, who is the executive director of the World Academy of Science, TWAS. Let me also welcome Dr. Aku Kwamie, health policy and system independent researcher. She corrected me already. Where is Aku? Okay, there is she. Professor José Moura, professor at Carnegie Mellon University and President-elect of IEEE, EEE. Can we kindly welcome him? Great. So as we start, a quick statistic, because I want us to get into the panel, so I won't take much time to introduce. But in the World Economic Forum's Human Capital Index, Sub-Saharan Africa, or Africa, they said that 55%, we do not capture 55% in Africa of our human capital potential. So if we think about it in that way, we are almost at 90%, in some countries almost 100% of access to education, and yet we do not have 55% of the human capital potential that we could be using. Peut-être on va commencer avec le ministre. Il y a beaucoup de modèles, il y a beaucoup de réformes qui se passent dans des pays, dans des universités, dans des écoles, mais pratiquement on ne voit pas ça changer le niveau de possibilités ou de besoins pour nos industries, et particulièrement aussi comme nous allons vers des économies de connaissances. Alors comment faire ça? Parce que si tu regardes les données qui viennent de la Banque mondiale et tout ce qui se passe, il y a une différence entre ce qui est dit et ce qui est fait. Et comment on arrive à faire ce changement? Ça, c'est pour toi.
Merci beaucoup. D'abord, merci à NEF de nous avoir invités. Et je salue mes amis qui sont ici, en particulier Murenzi, que je connais depuis maintenant 21 ans. Et alors, il y a une prise de conscience que pour l'éducation doit servir l'économie et la société. Et c'est dans ce sens-là que chez moi au Sénégal, en 2012-2013, nous avons beaucoup discuté, tout le monde, et nous sommes arrivés aux conclusions. Et il y a eu un conseil présidentiel le 14 août 2013 où le président Macky Sall a pris 11 décisions. Et ces 11 décisions influencent aujourd'hui tout le déroulement de l'enseignement supérieur, la recherche et aussi ont un impact sur l'économie. Je vais prendre 3 exemples. Le premier, c'est l'agriculture. Ceux qui suivent l'agriculture sénégalaise de 2013 à 2018 savent que l'agriculture sénégalaise a beaucoup progressé en productivité. Je prends l'exemple, c'est l'arachide. Nous sommes passés de 500 000 tonnes. Aujourd'hui, cette année, on est à 1 500 000 tonnes. Nous mangions beaucoup de riz, mais nous allions l'acheter en Chine, au Vietnam, au Cambodge. aujourd'hui, nous en produisons à peu près 80% de ce qu'on mange. Pourquoi cela? Parce que l'agriculture utilise des semences sélectionnées qui ont été conçues par nos chercheurs et par un organisme africain qui s'appelle Africa Rice. Nous avons un deuxième exemple, c'est le progrès que nous avons fait dans le numérique. Et ce progrès a amené aujourd'hui des multinationales à s'installer et à faire le pari du développement au niveau du Sénégal. Je citerai une multinationale qui s'appelle Atos, qui a déjà recruté au Sénégal 500 ingénieurs et qui font le développement et qui se fixe comme objectif d'ici 2020 avoir 2000 ingénieurs au niveau du Sénégal. Enfin, le troisième élément, et je reviens à la réforme. La réforme, c'est 11 points, mais j'en prends 3. C'est la réorientation vers les sciences et les technologies. Comment faire pour que notre système, qui produisait plus de littéraire, plus de sciences sociales, produise aujourd'hui plus de scientifiques, tout en gardant la production de lettres, de sciences humaines. Ce n'est pas en opposition, mais qu'on en produise beaucoup plus. Et pour cela, il faut toute une politique de promotion de la culture scientifique, toute une politique, manière d'enseigner, de mieux former les enseignants et que les enseignants soient sensibles au milieu social et à l'application. C'est aussi mettre en place des infrastructures de promotion de la culture scientifique. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous sommes en train de construire, et le 20 avril, nous allons inaugurer la médiathèque à la Cité du Savoir, et nous sommes en train de construire la maison de la science. L'autre aspect, c'est le numérique. Vous savez, le numérique, je dis toujours, c'est venu pour l'Afrique. C'est pour l'Afrique. Vous savez, quand vous êtes à 800 km de la capitale et vous voulez envoyer vos enfants suivre des études supérieures, suivre des études professionnelles dans la capitale où il n'y a pas de gens qui peuvent les accueillir, comment faire? Les premiers à perdre, ce sont les personnes en situation de handicap, ce sont les jeunes filles. Parce que chez nous, les parents n'aiment pas trop que les jeunes filles s'éloignent de la famille. Et le numérique nous permet aujourd'hui d'amener l'enseignement au niveau des localités tout en gardant le haut niveau. Donc à ce niveau-là, c'est pourquoi on a développé l'université virtuelle. Et avec l'université virtuelle, les espaces numériques ouverts que nous implantons dans les localités et nous en profitons pour développer la télémédecine. Et enfin, pour terminer, c'est la transformation, c'est aussi changer le système de gouvernance de nos universités. Parce que tant qu'elles étaient uniquement gouvernées par les académiques, les universités n'étaient pas sensibles à la demande de la société, à la demande de l'économie. C'est pourquoi nous avons changé la loi. Aujourd'hui, chaque université a un conseil d'administration. Le président et le vice-président proviennent du monde socio-économique. Et les universités sont redevables du service à la communauté. Aujourd'hui, c'est une mission des universités que de faire le service à la communauté. Voilà quelques éléments que je voulais juste vous répondre à votre question.
Et puis, monsieur le ministre, là, c'est à votre niveau, à l'éducation supérieure, hein, à l'enseignement supérieur. Mais comment travailler avec des parents? Parce que la culture scientifique commence à 4 ans. Alors comment, parce qu'à votre niveau, vous les recevez déjà à 18-20 ans, comment on va changer ça à 4 ans?
Alors, changer ça, c'est très important. Il y a quelques éléments. C'est d'abord l'école, il faut profiter de l'école et du milieu. Nos écoles baignent dans des espaces où je dis qui sont des espaces naturels de développement de l'amour, de la vocation pour la science et la technologie. Quand vous circulez dans les forêts, quand vous circulez dans les savanes, quand vous allez dans les champs, quand vous allez dans les ateliers de menuiserie, de quincaillerie, tout cela, c'est des espaces où lorsque le maître est formé, il peut trouver les opportunités de donner goût à l'enfant, pour que l'enfant puisse évidemment voir que ce qui est autour de lui, c'est dessiné, ça peut être modélisé par la science et avoir goût à la science. L'autre aspect aussi, pas seulement le milieu, mais nos traditions. Nos traditions. Je prendrai 3 choses simples dans la tradition. La première, au Sénégal, nous avons une tradition. Nous n'avons pas beaucoup de psychologues, mais tout le monde va chez la voyante ou le voyant. Et chez nous, on a une manière de faire la voyance qui est, on l'appelle le guissané en langue fulani ou wolof, et c'est sur le sable. Et cette manière de faire la voyance, c'est du calcul binaire matriciel. Et c'est comme cela, ceux qui font la voyance, évidemment, font du calcul binaire sans le savoir. Et c'est à partir de ces dessins qu'ils interprètent et vous disent, ben, vous allez être malade, vous allez, ainsi de suite. Alors, je ne parle pas, est-ce que c'est vrai ou c'est faux? Alors, mais c'est très intéressant quand vous l'expliquez aux enfants et les enfants comprennent cela. L'autre élément, je dirais simplement, parlant de la tradition, puisqu'il y a un mathématicien mozambicain qui a beaucoup écrit sur ça, Paulus Guedes, sur la culture africaine, dans les mathématiques dans la culture africaine, dans les objets d'usage. Je parle des langues nationales. Au Sénégal, nous avons 5 langues nationales qui ont la même manière de faire la numération. Nous comptons comme ceci. On dit 1, 2, 3. Si je veux compter 17, je vais dire 10 et 5 et 2. Si je veux compter, par exemple, 89, je vais dire 5 et 3 dizaines et 5 et 4. Alors, ce système de numération qui se modélise facilement, parce que vous n'avez besoin que des 2 doigts des mains. Tout se fait avec les 2 doigts des mains, mais il faut savoir calculer avec, faire l'addition, la soustraction, la multiplication, la division. Et c'est tellement passionnant quand vous en parlez avec les enfants. Enfin, quelque chose de plus évolué, je dirais. Nous avons eu l'expérience depuis quelques années d'avoir ce qu'on appelle, avec une association sénégalaise qui s'appelle l'Association sénégalaise pour l'astronomie. Et nous avons un bus, le bus de l'astronomie, avec des télescopes. Et le bus circule dans les régions et s'arrête au niveau des lycées. Et le soir, les enfants font des observations et il y a des conférences autour de l'astronomie. Par exemple, chez les pêcheurs, il y a des échanges magnifiques le soir avec les enfants pour voir les étoiles qui sont dans les ciels, comment ils se guident avec les étoiles, parce qu'ils vont pêcher loin et ils restent assez longtemps en mer et ils n'ont que des pirogues assez simples. Ils n'utilisaient pas encore le GPS et autre chose. Et quand vous avez aussi les éleveurs Peul, les éleveurs Fulani, qui connaissent les constellations, comment ça donne une manière tout à fait enracinée de promouvoir la culture scientifique. Voilà juste quelques exemples pour ces enfants.
Thank you, Minister. I want us to keep in mind, all of the panelists, that we're going to be ending before, when we end, we're going to be talking about education models. And so we're losing the examples that you were using that we can use from our culture. But let me go to Dr. Córdova. The U.S. National Science Foundation and the many organizations that work in the U.S. spend huge amounts of dollars on public engagement. So as you tell us a little bit more about the work you do, maybe you can also touch on what has been working on in terms of public engagement in the U.S., particularly in your context.
Sure, I'd be very happy to. First, let me say just how thrilled I am to be at the NEF Forum. I've learned so much. It's just been fabulous, just most interesting. So I have a slide, if I could have it, please. Yes, just one slide here. And this slide shows many things and addresses your question, Nathalie. This is really all about collaboration between the US through the National Science Foundation and Africa. We're very pleased to be co-funding 400 projects in Africa with Africans in 43 countries. In fact, all of those shaded in green are the countries that we have projects in. And I picked out just 6 out of the 400 to illustrate some themes. And those themes are engagement of different kinds of approaches like computer modeling and web-based tools and field courses, hands-on experiences for youth. So just going clockwise, starting at the top right, there's in Egypt, there's a geospatial mapping program that engages both experts and non-experts. In fact, anyone can join in. And this is very important because of climate change and just land use change in general, that, that farming practices and all of the topology is really changing in all of Africa. So we have a web-based tool that the Africans and the Americans have developed for easy access to be able to look at long-term trends. Then in the next slide is in Ethiopia, and there we have high school students who have developed tools for cell phones for farmers to use, applications where they can find out more about water resources and how those are changing and be able to manage their crops using this tool. In the bottom right, we have a materials institute in Tanzania and also in Uganda, and it's spreading. And this is all about quantum research and developing new kinds of materials. I know quantum research is one of the things Africa is very interested in and has a lot of work in. And so this is really developing graduate students to become a professional and scientists and teachers in this field. And then in South Africa, we have undergraduate students who are getting field experiences with a geophysics program. And we find that hands-on experiences, active learning, is one of the most fruitful ways to engage young people and have it all really come home to them. And then there's the malaria research in Nigeria and elsewhere. And this is all about sensor technology. How do you develop non-invasive sensors? And we heard a brilliant talk about that a couple of days ago right here about malaria detection. This is a Nigerian-born scientist named Dr. Eddie Agbo, who has developed such a sensor. And then finally on the top left is from Mali, and we just heard about Mali in the last session in food. And there we have our food, water, energy nexus all converging, doing computer simulation and modeling with the Africans to develop web-based approaches to learn more about world markets and climate change and how they're affecting the flow of food and water and energy. So these are to convey that collaboration is incredibly important. It's very valuable to us in the States, and we believe it's valuable also here in Africa. And it's taught us a lot about the youth experience and engagement of communities, because all of these projects were also picked because it's not just about high school students or graduate students and their faculty, but it's all about the whole community also participating and having access to the tools that are developed.
And so take us through some of the programs, the public engagement programs you do in the U.S. Are you funding programs for younger generation of scientists, so our future scientists, the people who will be leading universities, who are going to universities and going to be our future researchers?
Yes, we do that in a lot of different ways. For example, as soon as I get back, we'll have a science and engineering festival that in Washington, D.C., where I live, that draws in about 350,000 students and their parents. And we have festivals all over the country. We sponsor a lot of what we call call informal science learning through museums, because of course they draw in big crowds and they have the rooms and capacity to do hands-on learning. And also television and radio shows, and so we help sponsor them. Some of you know that the reason I became a scientist was from watching such a television show about stars, and you mentioned stars in astronomy, and that drew me into it. So you never know what the source of inspiration will be for a young person, so we develop a whole lot of programs in order to excite them, because it all starts with inspiration, and then after that you want to to recognize the challenge that also in our country that we are not getting enough youth involved in science and engineering careers. We bring in at the university level a lot of students from all over the world, and they're brilliant students and they do so well. Some stay, some go back to their home countries. But we have not drawn nearly enough of our women and underrepresented minorities to be engaged in science and engineering, even though we have a plethora of one-off programs in different parts of the country. So now we started something called Includes. It's really an acronym, but it means what it says. We have 70 pilot programs around the country that they're all different. Each is unique. They can be led by communities or universities, any kind of group. Some are led by scientific societies, and they are community-based. They're called collective action. They're to grab hold of a very large environment or ecosystem and ask itself, what is the problem in this area that really needs to be addressed, and how do I provide more access to young people to want to have, first to know more about science and engineering, decide if it's for them, and then to gain more access and better educational opportunities. And this has worked brilliantly well in just a couple of years' time, and now those different groups are forming alliances, and then we're developing a backbone of these alliances. So we'll have a network of networks, and that's the only way you can really scale, is for people to learn the best practices from each other, what works. We bring them all together a couple of times a year, all the principal investigators and the lead workers. They share what is happening, what's working, and then they further their alliances.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to go to Prof. Murenzi, and I'm going to ask you the hard questions. Professor, how do we, at your level, you're even past the minister, you're dealing with seasoned scientists, right? And so I want to ask you a couple of questions because of your experience here in Rwanda. How do you, the US, we heard from Dr. Córdova that they invest millions of dollars in these programs, and as we know in Africa, the Academy of Sciences, and I will say this and hope it does not get me into trouble, are quite weak and disconnected from lower levels of researchers that are coming up. And I mean researchers who are young, the curious minds. There is a disconnect. You see the U.S. National Foundation invest in museums, it invests in all these projects so that by the time they get to where they're supposed to, you've captured all these people. And so what do we do in Rwanda? What do we do in Ghana? What do we do in these places where scientists, elite scientists, are very far away from young people? And I mean younger people than high school. My second question is, in terms of resource constraints, how do you make sure that there are programs that can be very useful within the, having a bus, the bus, like the minister mentioned, cannot go throughout Senegal, cannot go throughout a country. And so what kind of things can be done to be able to get curious minds coming into science?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank NEF for the invitation. And of course, it's a great honor to share this to be on the panel with the minister, my friend, and also with France. As you know, my friend, as you know, NSF is a agency funding science, and this is something that we are proud of to really have you here in our country. I'm going to just start by example. In my early career as a teacher, a math teacher in Burundi, I was 23, and my first experience was at an all-girls school in rural Burundi. I had 4 classrooms, 4 years, year 1, 2, 3, and 4, and each class had around 30 to 40 students. So I was teaching almost all week and sometimes even weekends, because when I arrived at the school, I realized that the previous teacher who was had been fired. They didn't even finish the program for the year before. So I have to catch up not only the program for the year before, I have to catch up the program for that year. So I had to teach even during the weekends. But I realized that really listening to the student was central. The mathematics is not an easy subject, and for women at the time, they didn't even consider to be important for them. So I tried to really make that important, and to do also science clubs. I will, in the evenings, I'll do talks on astronomy. I'll try to do things to make sure that you interest them. So later on, a year later, so the second year, I was transferred in Bujumbura, in the capital, and I was put in charge of the two main schools, the Ateneo de Bujumbura, which was more government, and the Collège de Saint-Esprit was more Jesuit school. So the two teachers, the math teachers in the science final year in Ateneo de Bujumbura, they were expatriates, so they have left, and the other one in the college, they have left. So they wanted somebody really who could replace these expatriates. We call them white people at the time, because the teachers were from Belgium and France. So I was the first actually African to teach the final years in math in those two schools. And again, the experience with the girls was very central, because here I was in charge of these two classrooms, one in each school, and there was a national exam. Had I failed the student for the national exam, it would have been a shame for me. So I thought, what should I do? Actually, I empowered the kids. I tried to listen to them. Each time I will give a theory, I will make sure that we have enough problems. And I will make sure that every student had a chance to go to the blackboard. And then I will sit there and listen to them, and then I will follow the student, in particular the weak one, those who I could see they are very weak in mathematics, then I will follow with them, and then each time he do a problem, and then we will from one of the class, and the student who was the best in that year. That was a major experience for me. This means actually, rather than sitting there and teaching them, actually I was like a student with them. So critical thinking is very important. During that time, I tried to give them some minimal critical thinking. So when you have a national science policy, as it was mentioned at the opening, knowledge acquisition and deepening, knowledge creation, which is the research, knowledge transfer and innovation. But the knowledge acquisition and deepening, what kind of science in primary education and secondary education? And how do you deal the relationship between the teacher and the kid is very central. You can have all the books that you want. You can have them, but if you can have all the experiment that you want, but if that relation is not good, it is a problem. So I think that is very, very important. So the issue of critical thinking was very, very sound. And the issue of the science culture. So if you are in the classroom, you are teaching botany, and you bring all these plants that are not really related to reality, why not teach the coffee tree? The coffee tree is botany. Why is the coffee tree in Kenya producing 10 kilo of beans, and Rwanda will produce 2? Because the Rwandan one at the time, a few years ago, was not taken properly. So botany becomes very central. How about the coffee tree? How about the parithium tree? How about the bean tree plant? So when the kids are standing in the classroom, you bring them with the reality of life. So I think this is something that is very, very important.
Let's talk about standardization, because there is somebody, Aku was talking this morning about 19th century way of looking at health governance, and it's the same thing in education. We talk about pedagogy, we have all these reports that come out every year from a plethora of institutions, but we still, our education system is still focused on standardization. And what you're saying is listen to the student, have a conversation, have them understand, build critical thinking, but at the end of the day, teachers are trying to make their students pass to the next level. And so how do you bridge this distance? So how do we bridge that disconnect? It's an important question, because if you are a rural teacher and your objective is to trying to secure funding, and that it's attached to how many students are passing, how do you answer this question? Maybe we'll have a few brief thoughts from the minister on this, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, of course, when here in Rwanda in particular, during around 2005 and 2006, I was a minister here, we promoted the notion of a science corner in the classroom. Don't forget, these are pre-computer years. Science corner, if you could put some minimal corner in the classroom, because we couldn't have lab and things like that. So you could have a poster on the human body, a poster on energy, a poster on the plant that we are talking about. You take the coffee tree plant and you show the details, and you take the pyrethrum, because that's what these kids are seeing in the field, or the coffee, or the bean, the bean. Will change dramatically. So being able to really to see what they are doing, but also the teacher. And also at the time also there was a challenge to get the copy, the books, because don't forget that to have the books in every school was not that easy. So the issue of having a science corner was an orientation. But coming back to that also, she mentioned the issue of science museum throughout the continent. Africa is the only continent where there is no science museum in countries. So you really, it's a science museum and science centers. These are places where the teacher even can be helped. I'm not talking about the library here, not totally science. Even here in Africa, in Europe, you have zoo. In Africa, we don't have zoos. Even here in my country, there is no zoo. Because we have them, but not all children will go to the mountain gorillas, not all of them will go to a Kagera. So these are things that we have to be able to bring actually the science at the center. The other thing I would like to say also is the science for the population at large. You see, the parents, how do you help the parent? Literacy, numeracy, and then some kind of minimal science literacy for the parents. The parents who are the farmers. They know what they do. They can do the farming of the coffee, but they have the science. How do you translate that in Kenya? I think with the climate change, the whole issue of erosion, those are issues that you can bring at the center for the population, because the linkage between the parent and the children is very central. So as a country builds its own scientific capacity, so linkage with the parent, what kind of science for the population at large? Sustainable development we're talking about. How do you bring that to the parent? How do you bring it to the population? And then how do you deal with the children? But also the mothers are central. The more a mother is scientifically literate or is literate, the more the children will be. So with a women organization, how do you work with the women organization? Through them, bring some kind of minimal scientific literacy, because that will be able to help the children.
Minister, do you want to intervene for 20 seconds on that? How do we get away from standardization?
Oui, je pense que c'est très important. Il y a deux choses. Il ne faut pas abandonner la standardisation, mais il faut développer l'esprit d'innovation dans l'enseignement et le rapport entre l'enseignant, l'élève et l'étudiant. Et dans ce sens-là, Murenzi a dit des choses qu'il faut renforcer. Et la culture de la société elle-même, sa prise de conscience de l'importance de la science, participe aussi à promouvoir les enfants pour que les enfants apprennent et aient envie d'apprendre et être accompagnés à apprendre la science. Je vais donner 2 exemples du Sénégal. Le premier exemple, il y a une vingtaine d'années, nos radios avaient commencé à donner la météo. Il pleut aujourd'hui, il ne pleut pas, ainsi de suite. Au début, quel était le réflexe des populations? Mais comment peuvent-ils prévoir la pluie? Comment peuvent-ils prévoir qu'il va avoir un orage? Et aujourd'hui, les paysans écoutent non seulement les prévisions de météo, mais les projections de l'hivernage que donnent les institutions de recherche qui sont au niveau du SILS. Puisque chaque année, au mois d'avril, il y a les projections. Est-ce que l'hivernage sera bon? Est-ce que la saison de pluie sera continue? Et ceci participe à programmer les cultures et à choisir les cultures. Ça, c'est un exemple. Un autre exemple, toujours, c'est au Sénégal, nous sommes 90% musulmans. Donc, l'observation du croissant lunaire est très importante puisqu'il est associé à certains rites religieux pour jeûner, la fête de Tabaski. Alors, pendant un temps, la radio annonçait qu'il y aurait une éclipse solaire où le croissant lunaire ne pourrait pas apparaître. Et c'était une question curieuse pour les populations. Parce que quand il y avait une éclipse solaire, les gens allaient à la mosquée prier. Parce que ça risque d'être la fin du monde. Et oui, dans notre jeunesse, c'était ça. Il y avait une sorte de peur. Et au fur et à mesure, aujourd'hui, nos spécialistes de physique, nos astronomes posent maintenant le débat à la radio, à la télévision, et font des projections et discutent avec les théologiens sur les éclipses, sur l'apparition du croissant lunaire. Ce n'est plus une question, je dirais, qui est un peu sur la tête des enfants et des populations comme étant une question hors de l'espace humain. Et je pense que c'est très important que nous utilisions les faits du quotidien pour renforcer la nécessité de sortir de certaines choses pour que la science prenne sa place au niveau de la société.
Yeah, that's very important. I would like to now go to Professor Moura first before I finish with Dr. Aku. You know, as the IEEE, you're the president now, or is it still president-elect?
I'm president-elect.
You're still president-elect, okay. I'm curious because this idea of actually doing what you learn. So as engineers, we have the problem across Africa that most people graduate from engineering school without and so as young children who in Africa have access to space, who build things out of nothing, mud, and they have so many things that are creative, how do we capture this and how do we make more engineers in the constraints in which we live in?
So thank you, Nathalie, for the question, because it fits perfectly with what I had in mind of speaking, which is exactly, I'm an engineer, a technologist, so I'm concerned with solving real-world problems. And real-world problems, finding real-world solutions to difficult problems so that we have some impact and address needs of the world. What it turns out, as I look around me and I think of what's going on, I think that we live in a very special time, which gives opportunity to all, and in particular to individuals in research universities, but also in small colleges in the corner of Rwanda. I think that we all live a great opportunity. I would even call it, we are living the start of a fourth industrial revolution. And as in all revolutions, it's like a technology, it's like a transformative technology period. And I say that because we have observed in the last 10 years that every single activity as human beings in their goings of everyday life, as they interact in society, in the corporate world, every single activity can be captured digitally. So it's the era of big data. And why is this a challenge and an opportunity? It's because it cleaned the slate. Nobody knows what to do with all this data. And what we need is smart people that are attempt to the opportunity, figure out what is it that someone else needs, what is it, how can I use my brain to come up with an innovative solution? And I'll tell you that the numbers are. I was listening to one of the plenaries this morning, and the professor, I think at the University of Pennsylvania, he mentioned that staggering number of 10 to the 17, that was the mitochondria. Well, the data that we are creating is like per year, digital, is like 500,000 of those mitochondria, but it's totally unstructured. So while the cells in the human body and the bacteria and so forth, they all know how to work together, the data that we create is totally unstructured. And so it's up to any one of us to put structure, because when we put structure in these bacteria that we create every year, we find solutions to problems. And so what I think is that the opportunity is to go back to the primary, secondary, tertiary education, continuing education, and instill in our students, in all of us, an enterprise spirit that goes beyond the methods that we learn in school, and instill in them the audacity of failure, trial and error, experiment, go back to the scientific method, you formulate, but you experiment. You put things together and you realize this, after all, is not what works. Let me try again, but let me not be afraid of fail. So I think that we live in a unique era. We need to start instilling in our students from first grade to whatever, the innovation spirit. Get out, try, tinker, and come up with solutions. And don't be afraid of, as one of the speakers also this morning said, of getting rich, because your idea was the successful one. And I think this, because the opportunity is there, and actually everybody's looking for solutions, from the best-known university or the largest corporate research lab to the smallest that opportunity. So it's a great time to experiment, imbue our students with this fearless feeling of fail is not the issue. What we need is to try, test, experiment, come up with solutions.
But then that clashes, if I can ask a further question. You know, even if you are inspired at school by your teacher, when you get home, failure is a problem. And so how do we make that connect between moving the education system forward and, you know, getting our societies to accept failure as an option?
So, great question to Nathalie. Let me reflect on the experience of my own university here in Kigali. So, my university, Carnegie Mellon University, is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Actually, has, I think, the first American campus, US major university campus in the whole of Africa. I don't know of another example. And I was speaking to the professors in this visit, so here in Kigali, brilliant people that were recruited all over the world and that are physically here. And I was talking to them and say, oh, what can we do? And they stopped right there, José, because the solutions have to be local. We have to understand how the education system here, and we are talking about Rwanda, here, how people learn in the primary school, on the secondary, on the tertiary, how they think. Their logic is unique to them. And if you come with imported solutions, you are doomed to fail. And so, in answer to your question, what we need is to understand the local conditions and then provide the opportunity for people through their own way of learning, and we talked about also this morning about the agricultures and the different crops and all that, how we use the local as an opportunity to create the future engineers. And let me just end with the two examples. Yesterday, I had the opportunity for a round table with 15 of the current crop of students. These are master students in information technology areas. They were full of questions. They were tentative. They didn't know what to do. Professor, what am I going to do next? How do I, if I want to be, continue my studies, how do I apply to a graduate school, for example? Or what kind of a job am I going to have? And I also had the opportunity to have lunch with a few alums of the same program. It was day and night. They were self-assured. They knew what they wanted. Companies and startup companies. And so I think that what we have is, if you adapt to the local conditions, and if you develop the methods, and if you bring the latest technology to everywhere, we create worlds of opportunity, and the students rise to the challenge. And that's what I learned I was full of ideas coming saying, okay, we are going to do X, Y, Z. And they said, stop right there, because nothing of that will work, because we have to understand how people work, learn here.
Thank you. I have a question, Dr. Aku, because now you're talking about health systems governance. So let me shift you to education systems governance. We have heard a lot in the last 10 years about reforming curricula, reforming pedagogy. Even the institution I work for, the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, the way we teach is quite innovative, because we're not interested in you passing or failing. I shouldn't say that. We want you to pass, but our objective is not to have you have the certificate. But if you look at the way that we talk about pedagogy, a lot is said, but we haven't seen any massive change. And so if you look at the way that you've been doing research in the health system, how can this be applied to the education system? Because in rural areas, you know, with limited resources, even if you look at Kigali versus a rural area in this country, the resources are the same. You might not have textbooks. You might not have the digital technology. You might not have connectivity. So the wonderful tablets you have do not work. And so that disconnect between what we're saying and what we're saying in our policies and the numbers that we might be fixing that are not real, the access, 95% access, does not actually say anything about the quality of what is being taught. How do we make this how do we link this so that it works? Because we're trying to create problem solvers, critical thinkers, but it's just not reflected in what we're doing.
Thank you, Nathalie, very much for the invitation to be on this esteemed panel as well. I just want to say that I'm just so thrilled that we're speaking about this at the conference, and the fact that comments came up on the first day plenary and yesterday in the presidential panel, I think just speaks to how important this issue is. So you're right, I think that there are very many lessons that can be taken from the health system to education, because they're both social systems that respond to they behave like complex adaptive systems. So when we're speaking about reforming curricula, there can't just be one input or one intervention. It has to be cascaded and it has to be coherent. So policies from the national level that trickle all the way down. And I'm happy that we're speaking about households, about carers, parents, because when we look at the indicators, we know that the education sector can't do it alone. When we look at the indicators, we know that progress in the education sector has been steadily decreasing over the past 10 years. And quality and equity are definitely a huge part of that we need to address. So one of the ways I think this can be addressed is about looking at building reflexivity into the way we think. And so that's for our learners and our students, but also for our teachers. So by reflexivity, what I mean is being able to reflect on who you are as a person and how that affects how you think, what your biases are, why you make the decisions that you do, why you ask the questions that you do, which is very important as a scientist. So if I take examples that we have done in the health sector with managers, we have gone through trainings on something, and these are perspectives that are not currently taught. They're not part of our education, our curricula. So we actually do go through much of our training as automatons. It's about performing, but it's not really about questioning who you are. It's not really about having a self-mastery or a self-awareness, which can inform you know, where you end up and what kind of science you're interested in. So developing reflexive thinkers, both in our teachers and in our students. And so that takes a coordinated effort. It takes effort for government policies to come in to actually support and create spaces for that kind of curriculum development. It takes teachers to be open to receiving that kind of training. And I think that we also have to respect the teaching vocation. In many of our countries, teachers do not receive the respect that they do. They don't receive the remuneration that they need. And we need to remember that teachers are people with families and dreams and hopes and aspirations. So if they are not able to satisfy the basic needs that they have, how can we expect them to impart knowledge? If I can think about a recent example that we've had in Ghana about a very young teacher working in a rural area, and many of you would probably be familiar with this story because it really blew up on the social media. But he was trying to teach his students computing, and where he was, there was no computer. So he would laboriously draw the Microsoft Word window on the blackboard to teach them. And so actually the Microsoft organization found this. They were able to bring him out to their educator exchange program in Singapore. And it really made headlines. Also, the local government and local Ministry of Education got informed. So donations came in to donate equipment. But the point is that when he was asked about why he would take the time to draw the MS Word window on the blackboard, he said, well, I love my children, and so I have to do whatever it takes to teach them what I know. So it comes back to the earlier comments that Professor made about relationships. And so building trusting relationships between teachers and students to be able to pull out that gift that is in each one for them to then find their way. So it's a concerted effort. The education sector can't do it alone. Parents have to also be supported. Caregivers have to be supported. And I know that in Ghana, what we do have is we have a lot of private sector, we have a lot of innovation hubs, we have a lot of outreach, which work both in the cities but also in the rural areas. And so being able to connect and map the landscape of what kinds of programs are available that parents or caregivers can tap into, can send their children off to. And then finally, I think just having a value, and the comment has been made by several of the panelists, having a value on local innovation, local need, explaining that science is not just for the ivory tower. It's about the everyday. What are our local needs? What are the problems? What are the questions we need to ask to answer our local challenges, and valuing that, and then also highlighting those local innovations and being proud of them in country in a coordinated way. I think that's how we can get there.
Thank you to the panel. I think if I can summarize that, one of the challenges is institutionalizing everything you're saying, because it's very easy to finish the report, hand it into the ministry and say, voila, we finished our report, but trying to institutionalize this change as well as build in time, because as you know, in Africa, everything is urgent. The minister's there for 5 years, sometimes longer, and he has to be able to show success, and we don't build enough time for the system to be able to catch up to some of these reforms. I want to take 3 questions before we close for lunch. So I see already the first hand up that went up here. Because you got a question. Ahead.
Bonjour, ma question s'adresse à Monsieur le ministre du Sénégal. Donc, en 2013, l'Agence nationale de la statistique et de la démographie a publié un rapport sur l'éducation nationale qui montrait la proportion d'hommes et de femmes pour chaque niveau d'études. Au Sénégal, à l'école primaire, on a 50% de femmes, plus de 50%. Quand on sort de la terminale, on est à 40% de femmes. Au niveau doctorat, on a 20% de femmes. Et ça, c'est tout domaine confondu. C'est sûrement pire dans les STEM. Ne devons-nous pas avoir une politique aussi orientée vers le genre pour ces questions, parce que la plupart de ces ressources humaines non exploitées viennent sûrement de se saigner des femmes dans l'éducation. Merci.
C'est une très bonne question.
Hi, my name is Halima Tuhima, and I'm the new NEF ambassador for Niger. I'm doing my PhD at the University of Cambridge, and I look at the intersection between inequality and learning outcomes. I will have 2 quick questions to ask to the House. How many people here have heard of...
Can we make it one?
One, okay, have heard of Shakespeare? Shakespeare. Everybody. How many have heard of Nana Asma Ufudio? And that is my question. How can we ensure that we are not only reforming how we are learning, but also what we are learning? Sure. I think as we think about this 4th revolution, there's a lot of latent knowledge in African countries that need to be uncovered. It's already there. We talk a lot about lack of data, but the data is there, and I think we just need to find ways, be creative about finding it. So how can we institutionalize this search for African data that is already around? Thank you. Another
great question. We're going to take one last question from this section here. No, the 2 hands that are up behind there. Behind it, way back.
Okay, thank you. My name is Gwambonera Gasigwa Christia from the high school called the Agaozo Shalom American School. And my focus is about, if you want to be the next Einstein will be an African, we will not start from the primary, secondary, and forget about the nursery school. So connect to that is, you know that language is also a barrier to the people of Africa. And we can start from nursery teaching them the language of English as the language of communication in Africa. So if we start from nursery schools, teaching them how to adapt the English, and so that we can sustain the what we call the science culture in kids. So if they know and be aware about what the language, they will be having the culture and be open because they already know English. So another focus is about how to put the critical thinking in the kids, in the young people. So the critical thinking is all about teaching and training teachers to teach students how to think, not what the teachers think. That's where students lost and don't get well in education. So thank you.
So let me
much.
flip that question and ask, how do we make sure, because I don't necessarily agree that we should bring in English or French early on, which are maybe not people's native language, but how do we make sure that we are building scientific cultures and not neglecting our languages? So how do we build in scientific culture in the local languages? As well as he said, how do we make sure teachers are not stifling students who think differently than them? And if you know, teachers in Africa, some of us left mathematics because you ask a question, teacher doesn't like it, and you stop asking questions that the teacher doesn't like. And so I'll allow every member of the panel to answer the questions that relate to them that they wish to answer and make some closing remarks, and then we'll end. Let's start with Professor Moura.
Yeah, that's a very important question. How do you allow children, as they go through the education system, to dare to question the professor? I think that's a spirit that if the teachers don't leave that, as it is very important to transmit to the children new knowledge, it is very important to educate in them the spirit of questioning the status quo. Only then will children actually dare to change the world. And that's what we all want, is children that will dare to change the world.
Thank you. Aku?
Thank you. So just continuing on Professor's point, I think that we have to remember that education systems are embedded within our larger country systems and our larger governmental systems, which are very bureaucratic and administrative. And so when we're speaking, and because many of our countries do have, a cultural deference to authority or compliance, it's a much larger shift that we're calling for. Now, just to give you an example, I was quite surprised a few weeks ago in Accra. There's a billboard that's gone up. It's sponsored by UNICEF, and it's a photo of a young girl speaking to probably her mother. And the writing says something like, "I feel good when adults speak to me kindly." And so the first time I saw the billboard, I almost drove off the road. I thought, wow. But it's this idea that we're recognizing more broadly that some of these old cultures don't help us. And so just by way of addressing the question of how do we change, there's a Ghanaian philosopher named Kwame Anthony Appiah. I think he's at Yale. And he's written a book called The Honor Code, and it speaks about how do you get large-scale shifts in cultures. And what he argues is that because we often go for the moral argument, but the moral argument is usually ineffective because most people already know it. So what he says is that cultures are able to shift when the practices compromise. Examples, he uses foot binding in China, and he uses the Atlantic slave trade as some examples. But it's a very interesting idea that if you can target the honor of a people, you can move cultural practices. And so to go to Halimatu's point about how can we value our African content, I think, it should be a shame if you are from whichever country you are and you don't know who your local scientists or your local artisans are. And so we should instill in our curricula, in our training, and in our homes this value and this honor around having knowledge of our local inventors and champions. Thanks.
So I will touch on the 3 points: gender, pre-primary, and the knowledge issue. First of all, the pre-primary is very important. The early childhood is very important, and during those years from 3 before going to primary school is central. And I know this country is focusing on that, and Today I've been discussing with somebody who's interested, what kind of science for the pre-primary. But those are discussions that a nation should be able to deal with. What kind of, with all partners in education and in science, discuss about that and come up with a common understanding and how we want to deal with that. But the whole issue of language, should we teach English in pre-primary but normally the language of learning at the early stage should be the mother tongue. That is very sensitive. Because at that kind of level, it's about play. The child will draw, will play with toys and things like that. So that you don't need necessarily to go into French, English, or complicated language teaching. But the mother tongue is I think is very central. But that would be discussed. The issue of gender should be based on evidence. What can we do? We have this, the leaking pipe. You start with so many women, and then you go losing them throughout the system. What can be done? People should be able to think at national level, at the university level, for example. There are women who are professors. How do you help them? If a young woman is just finished her PhD, started her career at 30, between 30 and 40, these are the years really where you really publish, you have scientific production. But those years correspond also the years where this young woman will have children. So it becomes a problem. So for a young man, professor can go to postdoc for 1 year and come back. But the woman, if she has a child, it will be very difficult to leave the child there and go. Then you realize that when the guy comes, it's very easy for him to promote him. But for the woman, during those years, there are some challenges. How can the government, how can the university help these young professors, women, when they are between 30 and 45? What kind of policies? Things can be done, I think, in that direction. And then you have the issue of, I would really call frozen knowledge. The continent produces 2.3% of the global publications. Does it mean that scientists in Africa or university professors are not publishing, are not doing research? They are doing research, but there are other barriers that their research does not reach the mainstream publication journals. What was done the other day with the Scientific Africa, I think, the journal that was established between NEF and Elsevier, those kind of initiatives may be able to help. But there is a barrier language. Most journals in science are in English. This means the whole of Western Africa, it's a challenge to be able to publish in English. And plus also, even English itself, because it's not our mother tongue in that sense, throughout the continent, it's a challenge to be able to publish. Although you may have the scientific material, but it does not reach the right journals. So those things can be done at the university level, at the national level. There are many ways that can be done. So I think that through that, I see frozen knowledge in that sense. Knowledge exists there. People are doing research, but it does not reach the mainstream publication system.
Yeah, I think that's important. In Egypt, as we were together a few weeks ago, that the government has invested to make sure that researchers have access to all major journals, to make sure that they are also aware of what's going on. Mm-hmm. So it requires political will and investment. Mm-hmm. Yes. Dr. Córdova.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathalie and NEF, for sponsoring this very interesting discussion. So I'd like to bridge the question about inquiry at the nursery school level with the issue of women and their situation. So I once made the comment when I was traveling in South America that all children are scientists, and it made some kind of a headline. People said, what do you mean by that? And I said, it's because they ask questions, and all scientific investigations start with inquiry. And so it's just so important that all of us, no matter where we come from, keep nurturing that questioning that people naturally ask when they're very young. And then about the time when they start attriting some of the underrepresented people, including women, is the time when more questions are suppressed and they're not encouraged. And we get into those more formal systems. So on the issue of women, it may surprise some people to know that it's a big issue in the United States as well. There are many, many fields, including mine, which is physics, astrophysics, that have very few women. At my age level, to do various things to address that. And we have a number of programs of, in order to really have change in an institution, you have to make sure that the institution adopts that change, incorporates it into what it does. So we have a program called Advance for women in academia, and any university can apply for it, but it means that they make a commitment that when the funding stops after 4 years, and this is about elevating women through the ranks of the professoriate, that they will continue it and make that commitment to keep doing that. On the issue of awards and name recognition that was brought up, that we have to take our roles as responsibly as possible. And NEF has done a great job of having women represented in all the different panels and so on. We had the experience at the National Science Foundation that our award, our premier and only award for a young scientist up until this past year, was given to a person under 35 years of age or 5 years from the PhD. And somebody pointed out that women are not being awarded this. In 40-some years, there's been like one woman, maybe two, that have ever gotten that award. And so I got an email from a woman out in the community who said, can't you just change the rules? So we went to the board, our National Science Board, and we said, you know, why don't we try it as a pilot program? So we changed the rules last year, and lo and behold, this year's winner, we changed it to 10 years from the PhD, the age of 40, a woman. You know, I mean, there are things that we all can do to look at where these biases creep up. And I'll just end with, on the subject of biases. You know, Heidi, in a previous panel a couple of days ago, said that she was looking for insights. What are the insights she's gained? So I'll share with you the insight that I've gained in this past year about the whole issue of women in science, and it was revelatory, was that this whole issue of sexual harassment, which has become a very big deal in the United States. Now, sexual harassment is not, you know, what people's first impression are, that somebody's been, you know, really terribly abused. It can be just little tiny things. Inappropriate wink or something like that. And it's all of a sudden people are standing up and saying, you know, this matters to me. When it happened to me, I changed my career path because I was so uncomfortable. And it was the first time for many of us, because people in a position like I'm in, who've been through, you know, 40 years or so and have just, you know, ridden the waves like a surfer, we don't always think that sometimes the surfboard goes down and you roll over in those waves, and that a lot of people have not had the opportunity to be resilient and have left the field. And I think, so we changed at the National Science about sexual harassment at universities and field sites and conferences and everything. And it is now, we're hoping other agencies adopt this too, but it's made news because it's the first time that, that we've just said, no, this cannot continue. This is our role. Even though we're a federal agency, we do have a role. We can withdraw the monies from people who are found to be, guilty of this. And so I think that there are conscious things when we identify where our biases are that we all have a role in changing.
Yeah, I think it's very important. At the NEF, we have a 40% policy for women. And everybody keeps making the comment that it doesn't lower excellence, as if having 40% women automatically lowers excellence. And it's our policy, and we work very hard at it, and it's very difficult to find women on panels in certain fields, but they can always be found. So I agree that it has to be very deliberate. Minister Niane, can you close us out?
Merci beaucoup. Alors, pour les enfants, j'aimerais peut-être parler rapidement. Il y a deux expériences au Sénégal. Une première, c'est des professeurs d'université, de mathématiques, qui sont organisés et qui circulent dans les lycées et collèges pour donner des conférences, je dirais, d'application des mathématiques dans la vie courante. Et ces conférences sont bien suivies par les élèves des lycées et des collèges et à travers tout le Sénégal. L'autre programme, j'en parle puisque je vois ici mon président et mon secrétaire perpétuel de l'Académie nationale des sciences et techniques du Sénégal, qui ont initié depuis plusieurs années un programme qui s'appelle La main à la pâte. C'est un programme d'origine de l'Académie française et que l'Académie nationale des sciences et techniques du Sénégal a, comme on dit, a naturalisé au Sénégal et aussi à développer à travers les écoles primaires, les collèges et les lycées. Et c'est des programmes intéressants. Alors, concernant le genre, vous le savez, au Sénégal, il y a eu la loi sur la parité. Et donc, dans les instances électives, il y a une parité. Au niveau des hommes et des femmes, c'est une obligation constitutionnelle. Et au niveau de l'éducation, les statistiques sont suivies. Effectivement, l'Agence nationale de statistique et de développement les sort. Alors, il y a des vagues. La vague du primaire, l'équilibre est atteint. Maintenant, cette vague se poursuit supérieure. Comment la transition démographique femmes-hommes se fait au niveau du baccalauréat, puisque c'est le ministère de l'Enseignement supérieur qui organise le baccalauréat au Sénégal. Alors, ce qu'on a constaté, on a 45 départements au Sénégal. Il y a 4 ans, le département de Dakar a réalisé la transition. Depuis 4 ans, on a plus de bachelières que de bacheliers dans le département de Dakar. Et cette année, on a un deuxième département qui s'y ajoute, c'est le département de Guédiawaye, qui est un des départements toujours de la région de Dakar. Et nous constatons quelque chose qui est bizarre cette année, et nous sommes en train de suivre cela. Il y a 2 départements dans le nord du Sénégal, qui est pourtant réputé très conservateur, très traditionnaliste, qui sont très proches de la transition. Alors ça, c'est une surprise. Nous sommes en train de voir maintenant les politiques. Nous avons des politiques de discrimination. Elle est appliquée depuis 2013, c'est au niveau des bourses. Au Sénégal, nous donnons les bourses pédagogiques sur la base des résultats. Et sur cette base, nous appliquons un coefficient de discrimination positif qui fait que depuis maintenant 3 ans, les bourses pédagogiques, il y a 51% de boursières contre 49% de boursiers. Le deuxième aspect de cette politique de discrimination positive, ce sont les positions des femmes dans les postes de direction. Ça commence par le ministère. J'ai 4 conseillères, les 2 sont des femmes. Ça commence par les directions du ministère. À peu près, on a la parité au niveau du ministère. Les directions générales, la dernière qui est la direction générale de la recherche, on a 4 directions, les 2 sont occupées par des femmes. La plus ancienne, c'est la plus conservatrice. On a 5 directions et il y a une qui est occupée par les femmes. Ensuite, il y a les universités. Et cette année, nous sommes très heureux parce que le Sénégal a nommé pour la première fois une femme recteur, qui est la femme recteur de l'université de Thiès. Et ensuite, maintenant, nous venons de créer 5 instituts supérieurs d'enseignement professionnel. C'est une nouvelle orientation vers la professionnalisation de l'enseignement supérieur. Et là, on a plus que la parité, puisque les 5 directeurs, les 3 sont des directrices. Donc, il y a un effort qui est en train d'être fait pour que ce soit visible et que les femmes puissent se reconnaître dans le système qui les dirige. L'autre aspect, c'est les bourses. Nous avons mis en place, depuis 2013, le programme d'appui à la promotion des enseignantes chercheurs. Alors, ce programme est exclusivement destiné aux femmes. Il s'adresse aux enseignantes et aux doctorantes. Et ce programme, nous l'avons mis en place, c'est ce que disait, je pense, c'est Murenzi ou madame, c'est les femmes, nous avons constaté qu'au Sénégal, elles ont une double fonction. Les mêmes fonctions que les hommes, et ensuite les fonctions sociales et familiales. Qu'elles progressent comme les hommes, les femmes sociologues nous ont dit qu'il faut leur donner les moyens de bouger, de sortir du pays pour un moment et pour leur permettre de se concentrer sur leurs activités de recherche. Et ce programme PAPES permet aux femmes de bouger et aussi de faire des publications. Nous en sommes à la 4e année et nous avons eu beaucoup de femmes qui sont passées professeurs, qui ont réussi au concours d'agrégation, qui ont publié des livres et donc ceci impacte sur le système. Voilà quelques éléments si vous voulez.
Merci beaucoup. Can you join me in thanking the panel for very important comments? I know it's around lunchtime, so allow me to close out this session and tell you that we will be coming back for the next session in 2, allowing us about 40 minutes for lunch. Hopefully you'll have down your lunch by then. Also to let you know that there is a lunch session with 10 of our ambassadors, so you can get to know the work that they're doing while you have your lunch. So thank you very much, and we'll see you at 2 o'clock.